Channel Sports Central will be over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be for the Indiana Hoosiers, a team that was 6-2 overall in the 2020 season. And this was an Indiana team that was actually a very good football team last season. They were one of the best teams in the Big Ten for sure last season, as they were the one team outside of Ohio State that was a contender in the Big Ten East. And this is definitely a team with Michael Penix that I could definitely see being a big contender in the Big Ten next season, and quite possibly the team to take down Ohio State. Why that is we're going to be going over here today. We're going to get started with Indiana's final prediction. We'll be looking at your season trends to get things started here today, looking back at how this team was last season. So once again, 6-2 is the overall record for the Hoosiers last season. Not a bad year at all for this team. This was definitely one of the best teams from Indiana that I've seen in quite a while. They're 4-0 in their first 4 games, 2-2 in the last 4. So overall, once again, pretty consistent team last season. Beat Michigan 38-21. Shut out Michigan State on the road 24-0. Those were a couple of big wins last year. 27-11 win over Maryland. And they also beat Wisconsin in Madison 14-6 was the final score there. So very good season once again for this team. I mean, that was a huge game against Wisconsin there. And for them to get the win in a very defensive matchup was extremely impressive. They would fall off a little bit towards the end of the season. They lose to Ole Miss in their bowl game, which was a pretty bad loss. This team did not get placed in a good bowl game hardly at all. I mean, Indiana definitely should have been placed in a much better bowl game. I mean, obviously, Ole Miss was just the better team in that matchup, but I feel like Indiana, with the record that they had, I mean, they were 6-1 heading into their bowl game. This team definitely should have been in a better bowl game. I mean, Indiana, or I think Ole Miss was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure they had a 500 record going into that matchup, so Ole Miss was not looking too good, but either way, Indiana did suffer a couple of bad injuries towards the end of last season, which definitely had an impact on how this team was towards the end of last year. But looking at your returning production, this is really where I see Indiana being a good team next season. And if you look at their returning production, you can definitely see why. Michael Penix is coming back. Going into 2020, I was pretty sure that we'd see a big season out of him and that he was a very talented and underrated quarterback, and I was exactly right. I mean, last season he was not a very accurate quarterback. That definitely needs to be improved going into next season. He was much more accurate in 2019. In fact, he was 12% more accurate in 2019 versus 2020, as he had a 69% completion rate in 2019 if you round up. So he had an outstanding accuracy rate last season in 2019. In 2020, not so good. 56% was his rate, but his touchdown interception ratio was even better in 2020 versus 2019. So if you look at it that way, he did have a pretty good season in 2020, but the accuracy does need to be much higher. He needs to get back up to where he was in 2019 accuracy-wise if this team is going to be a contender in the Big Ten for sure. But Michael Penix, I do think he's definitely got potential to be possibly the best quarterback in the Big Ten next season. I like him quite a bit. As for your running back position, Stevie Scott's coming back. He is going to be the main name that you're going to hear in the backfield, and he definitely had a good 2020 season, put up 640 yards, 10 touchdowns, so watch out for him. Ty Freifogel, your top receiver. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he's going to be coming back as well. He was a big receiver for this team, 720 yards last season. Whop Fillier from last season put up 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. He will not be back, so your second wideout there will not be back for next season. But Miles Marshall, your third receiver last season, will be. So you got your first and third receivers both coming back for next season. Not too concerned with the skill players positions for Indiana. I mean, you're losing your second receiver, and that's just about it. You've got a transfer coming into the running back position, so looks pretty good for Indiana next season offensively. Defensively, you lose one on the offensive line, or one on the defensive line, and then one in the secondary. You also lose one on the offensive line if you look at that. But returning production looks great for this team. You're only losing 2 starters defensively. This team, returning production-wise, looks like one of the best teams in the Big Ten for sure. And considering this team had an outstanding 2020 season, they were 6-2 overall. This team definitely has got a ton of upside going into next season, and I like them quite a bit going into next year. I will say I do think this team definitely has the best chance in the Big Ten East to take down Ohio State. I mean, Penn State's going to be pretty good next year, but I think Indiana especially, I like them quite a bit to possibly take down Ohio State in the Big Ten East. I mean, Ohio State is always the big powerhouse right now in the Big Ten, and they've won however many conference titles in a row. And Indiana, I mean, this team definitely, I like them quite a bit. They've got a lot of experienced players, and Penn State is also going to be a team to worry about. But I could see this Indiana team definitely playing it pretty close with Ohio State. You also have them at home this year. You've got the Buckeyes coming to town, so that gives you an even better reason to believe that this team could possibly pull a huge upset in that matchup. If Michael Penix is healthy, though, this team is definitely a huge threat, and I mean it could cause a ton of chaos in the college football world if Indiana does end up possibly winning the Big Ten. I mean that is not a doubt of this team. I definitely think this team could potentially win the Big Ten. I mean, if you can win the Big Ten East, that's the first step in the right direction. You go up against Wisconsin or Minnesota or some team in the Big Ten championship game, you definitely have got a reasonable shot to potentially even be in the college football playoff. I mean, if you win the Big Ten, that already puts you in definitely the conversation if you've got a good record. So, but for Indiana, is this team a dark horse contender? For sure. I mean, this team is not talked about very much, but the returning production looks great for this team. And I do think this team is the team to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten, if any. As for your schedule, let's start looking at that. You've got a tough one going into next season. You've got Iowa, of course, to start off the season. They'll be a pretty good team next year. I could see them being a 7-9 win team. Idaho, pretty easy game there. Then you got Cincinnati. That's definitely going to be a huge game in determining how this team is going to be next season. If Indiana is able to beat Cincinnati there, this team is definitely a team to watch out for. But if they take a loss there, it might not be your season just because of how tough of a schedule that you've got after that Cincinnati game. But then you got Western Kentucky on the road. You got Penn State on the road. Huge matchup against Penn State. Then you got Michigan State and then Ohio State. Obviously, the Ohio State matchup is going to be extremely influential in determining who wins the Big Ten East. Then you got Maryland on the road, Michigan on the road, Rutgers at home, Minnesota at home, then Purdue to finish out the season. Looking at September here, Iowa's going to be a close one, but I think you get the win. It's going to be, once again, very close. Iowa's going to be a good team next season. I could see possibly 8 or 9 wins out of them. But you get the win. That's going to be a good start to the season. Then you beat Idaho the next week pretty easily. Cincinnati, that is going to be a win for Indiana. And I went back and forth on that several times, but I think Cincinnati going on the road, I think Indiana is going to be the winner there. I think Indiana is just all around the more experienced team. I mean, Cincinnati's got an experienced quarterback for sure, but I like Indiana in that matchup. Then you got Western Kentucky on the road. That's going to be also an easy win. So you start off the season 4-0, looking pretty good heading into October, which October is the most crucial month of the season for sure if you're a Hoosier fan. You got Penn State on the road. Once again, that's a huge game there in determining who is going to go up against Ohio State to possibly win the Big Ten East. I mean, you've got 3 teams in the Big Ten East that I could see winning the division, and that is Ohio State for sure. I mean, they're definitely my favorite by far right now. And then you got Indiana and Penn State in the background. Indiana and Penn State both are going to be at the top of the Big Ten East. And if anyone's going to beat Ohio State, it's either going to be, once again, Indiana or Penn State. So whichever team wins that matchup is going to be the team to go up against Ohio State and possibly beat them in the Big Ten East, or per se, the team that could, if you're looking at it schedule-wise. So for Penn State there, that's going to be a close one for sure. I went back and forth on this game several times, but I got to give it to Penn State. It's on the road in a very tough environment. If it's a night game, I mean, that's just going to be a recipe for a rough game for Indiana. And I think Indiana next season, I mean, Indiana just is not a football powerhouse, and that doesn't mean anything, you may think. But Indiana, this is a team that this is one really good moment for them. Like, after this season, after Michael Penix is gone, I mean, who knows? Indiana could still be a good team, but this team likely will fall off a bit. So, I mean, this is a team that I think going into a brutal environment in Penn State, it's going to be a tough matchup. I'm going to give it to the Nittany Lions there. Once again, very close matchup. Michigan State, easy win. That's going to be a home game. Then you got Ohio State. Once again, that Ohio State game is extremely influential in the Big Ten East. I got to give it to the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes are just too good of a team, and I think it could be a closer matchup because it's at home for Indiana. Who knows? We could see the upset of a lifetime for Indiana there. That would be insane if they got the win. But I got to give it to Ohio State. Sorry, Hoosier fans. I think Ohio State is just the better team. They get the win. So you're going to be 5-2 heading into your Maryland matchup. You're going to get a close win there in Maryland. So you'll be 6-2 heading into November. So at this point, with 2 losses, the odds of you winning the Big Ten East are pretty low. But I do think this team, once again, I never said that they would win the Big Ten East. I'd say this team is potentially the team that could beat Ohio State, but I just don't. If you're asking my prediction, I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but this team does have potential to do so. As for November, though, then you got Michigan, close one, but it's going to be a win for Indiana. You beat Rutgers easily. Minnesota is going to be a close one as well. I could see Minnesota being in a situation where they could possibly win the Big Ten West. So that'll be a big win there for Indiana. Then you got Purdue on the road, easy win as well. Don't expect much out of them. So 10-2 is your record for next season, which if you're a Hoosier fan, you cannot complain with 10-2. 10-2 would be an outstanding season for this team. I mean, it's been a while since Indiana's been a big contender in college football. I mean, it's been a while since has been a contender. I mean, if you look at the history of this team over the past even like 2-3 decades, I mean, this team has had a tough time even getting to bowl games. Like, they've only been to 5 bowl games in the past pretty much 20 years, so, or even 30 years. So, I mean, this team has had a tough time in college football, but this should be probably the best season that we've seen in a very long time for Indiana. So if you get to 10-2, there is nothing to complain about if you're a Hoosier fan. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this Indiana team. Definitely a polarizing team next season. I mean, this team has got experts who hate on them and also experts who like them, which, I mean, I think this team definitely has got potential to be a very good team next season. But I do appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.